The skies above what used to be Atlanta were quiet, eerily so. Streets, once choking with traffic, now lay empty, broken, and overgrown. Wind whispered through the cracked windows of ruined buildings, brushing against rusted street signs and shattered glass. Amid this stillness, a lone figure crouched in the shell of an abandoned grocery store. Major Elena Ross, her uniform torn and dusty, kept her rifle aimed at the shattered entrance. She wasn't alone. For survivors huddled behind her, 2 teenagers, a former schoolteacher, and a retired mechanic. They weren't soldiers, but they were all that was left of Recon Unit Echo 7, a team sent to investigate the status of Zone 12, an area officially marked as cleared. Clearly, someone had lied. "They're late," muttered Davis, the mechanic, his voice low and rough. "They're not coming," Elena whispered, her eyes fixed on the street outside. "They're already dead. We're on our own." It had been nearly 12 years since the outbreak had decimated the population. The virus had spread faster than anyone could contain, turning the infected into relentless predators, mindless but deadly. The early years were chaos, cities collapsing within days, governments falling, communication lines snapping like dry twigs. America, as the world knew it, had died screaming. But humanity hadn't disappeared. They had adapted. Underground bunkers. Floating colonies. Fortress cities walled off with layers of steel and hope. In the West, the coalition of reclamation zones had formed, military remnants, scientists, and surviving civilians working together to push back. Slowly, painfully, they began the process of reclaiming what was lost. Zone 12 was supposed to be one such success. Reports had indicated the area was clear, suitable for rebuilding. But what Elena saw painted a different picture. Burned-out vehicles with claw marks. Bones stripped of flesh. And worst of all, silence. No birds. No insects. Just the quiet dread that always came before the horde. "I told them not to send us," Elena muttered, mostly to herself. "We weren't ready." The teens, siblings Kayla and Jace, sat side by side, their eyes wide but dry. They were used to fear. Fear was the new normal. Kayla gripped a rusted crowbar tighter than a lifeline, while Jace toyed nervously with a pocket knife. The teacher, Mrs. Henley, had tried to keep them calm earlier. She whispered stories from before the outbreak. Beaches. Amusement parks. Pancakes. Now she just stared out the window, lips moving silently in prayer. The ground trembled. Elena stiffened, raising a hand. Everyone froze. A low growl echoed in the distance. Not close, but not far either. "We need to move," she said quickly. "South. Toward the old subway tunnels. If we reach the underground checkpoint, we can radio for evac." Davis shook his head. "What if they hear us?" "They already did," Elena said grimly. "They're tracking us. Every second we stay here, they get closer." Suddenly, a faint thud came from the ceiling above. Everyone looked up. Another thump. Louder. Then silence again. Kayla whispered, "They're on the roof?" Elena moved fast, motioning for the group to follow her toward the back exit. She opened the emergency door slowly, inch by inch. Then came the scream. It wasn't human. A shrieking, rasping wail split the air as a grotesque figure dropped from the roof, crashing through a broken section of the ceiling. It landed with an inhuman thud, flesh sagging, eyes glowing faintly with a sickly yellow hue. It wasn't like the old infected. This one was faster. Stronger. Smarter. It snarled and charged. "Run!" Elena shouted, raising her rifle. She fired twice, both bullets slamming into its chest. It barely flinched. The group scattered through the alley behind the store as more growls echoed from the surrounding buildings. The street, moments ago silent, now roared with chaos. From alleyways, windows, and sewer grates, infected poured out, dozens of them. Their howls pierced the air like sirens. Not mindless. Not anymore. The infected had changed. Davis pulled Kayla behind a dumpster as Jace and Mrs. Henley followed Elena down a side path. Gunfire cracked through the air. Elena aimed carefully, taking headshots, but there were too many. "This way," she yelled, leading them into a collapsed parking garage. The air was thick with dust, the ground slick with moss. They climbed over debris, crawled through wrecked cars, and emerged in a quiet stairwell that led down, deep into the underground transit system. Only when the heavy metal door slammed shut behind them did the noise fade. Darkness surrounded them, the only light a flickering flashlight in Elena's hand. They had escaped. Barely. Elena's face was grim. "Those weren't normal infected," she said. "They're evolving." Everyone looked at her in silence. "And if they're changing," she continued, "then we're running out of time." High above them, on a rooftop half a block away, a figure watched through binoculars. Clad in makeshift armor, with a radio crackling in his ear, the scout whispered, "Command, this is Watchtower. Echo 7 encountered the new strain. Repeating, they've seen the Alpha class." A pause. Then a reply. "Understood. Initiate Phase 2. It's time to fight back." To be continued. The narrow beam of Elena's flashlight cut through the darkness of the subway tunnel like a lifeline. The concrete walls were slick with moisture, and the stale air clung to their skin like a second layer. Drips echoed around them, each one a reminder of just how deep they were. With every step, the ground vibrated slightly, as if the city above was trembling in its sleep. Jace walked closely behind Elena, holding Mrs. Henley's hand. Kayla stayed near Davis, whose makeshift backpack clanked faintly with spare ammo and broken tools. The silence between them was heavy, not the calm kind, but the sort that crackled with tension. Elena glanced over her shoulder. "We stay in this tunnel until we reach checkpoint Omega 3. If we're lucky, the relay tower's still functional. We'll call an evac." "What if it's not?" Kayla asked, voice low. Elena didn't answer. The group continued on, weaving past rusted subway cars overtaken by mold and vines. Spray-painted messages lined the walls, some hopeful, some desperate. "We made it to Haven. Zone 7 is a trap. Don't trust the quiet ones." Mrs. Henley slowed, staring at a mural of painted faces. "This used to be a place where people came and went freely," she said softly. "Rushing to work. Picking up children. Getting home late. Now it's just bones and echoes," Davis muttered. Then, from up ahead, they heard it, a faint mechanical hum. Elena raised her fist. Everyone froze. She crouched, crept forward, and peeked around the curve of the tunnel. There, tucked behind a barricade of crushed benches and stacked sandbags, was a small generator flickering with dim power. And behind it, steel doors marked with a faded symbol, a phoenix rising through fire. Omega 3. They'd made it. Elena motioned for the others to stay back as she approached slowly, gun ready. She scanned the area. No movement. No signs of struggle. But something still felt wrong. She reached the control panel and flipped the primary switch. The backup lights sputtered on, illuminating the tunnel in dull yellow. The heavy doors groaned but didn't open. "Access code required," a robotic voice announced. Elena swore under her breath. "Of course." Jace stepped forward. "Wait, try 2-0-3-1. That's the Coalition's founding year, right?" She punched it in. Nothing. Davis stepped up, scratching his beard. "They change codes weekly. Only recon captains get updates." "I haven't received anything since the blackout 3 days ago," Elena said. "Which means either command is compromised, or we are." The sound of something metal clattering behind them made everyone spin. A figure stumbled into the light, human, barely. Blood on his uniform, limping, gasping for air. His Coalition badge read, Corporal Lin. "Don't shoot," he gasped, falling to one knee. Elena caught him before he hit the ground. "What happened?" Lin coughed hard, blood spraying onto the floor. Alpha Class breached the station 2 nights ago. They came out of the ground. Dug their way through the quarantine barriers. We held them off as long as we could, but they were organized. Organized? Mrs. Henley echoed. Zombies? They weren't just hunting, Lynn wheezed. They had a leader. One that didn't charge blindly. It directed them. Elena's eyes narrowed. What did it look like? Lynn shivered. Tall. Pale. No rot. Eyes like glass. It didn't roar, it spoke. Everyone stared at him. That's not possible, Davis muttered. Lynn gripped Elena's wrist. It's coming. It knows you're here. You've seen too much. Suddenly, the lights dimmed again. The generator hissed, then shut off entirely. Darkness swallowed them whole. Then came the laughter. Not mad. Not manic. Cold. Human. But it was not human. Kayla screamed as something slammed against the steel doors behind them. Elena raised her rifle, scanning the blackness for movement. Another impact. Then another. Elena barked, "Get to cover." They dove behind the barricade as claws tore at the steel. Whatever was out there wasn't rushing. It was testing. Waiting. Studying. Jace clutched Kayla's arm. It's not acting like a zombie. No, Elena said, eyes hard. It's worse. Lynn grabbed Elena's collar. You have to warn Command. The infection, it's changing faster than we thought. This isn't a virus anymore. It's a strategy. With a final breath, Lynn collapsed, lifeless. Elena stood slowly, heart pounding. For years, humanity had believed they were simply fighting disease, mindless monsters without thought or plan. But what if that was never the truth? What if something had been evolving behind the scenes, building an army, waiting for the moment humanity let down its guard? This wasn't just survival anymore. It was war. And America was still the battleground. To be continued. Elena didn't sleep. She sat with her back against a rusted support beam, her rifle across her knees, eyes fixed on the sealed door. The others huddled in uneasy silence behind the barricade, using Lynn's old coalition coat as a makeshift blanket. The faint scent of fuel and ash hung in the air. Somewhere deeper in the tunnels, water dripped, steady as a ticking clock. They hadn't heard anything since the last pounding at the door hours ago. But Elena knew that thing was still out there. She'd seen enough battles to recognize a predator that didn't just kill, but thought. Kayla broke the silence first. What if there are more of them? More like him? Davis shifted uncomfortably. Then we're not fighting a zombie outbreak anymore. We're in the middle of a silent war. And the enemy just stopped playing dumb. Elena stood, stretching her stiff legs. We need to move. Omega-3's a bust. If that leader figured out how to track us here, this location's compromised. But we have nowhere else to go, Jace protested. We can't go back up. The surface is crawling. And without a working signal, we can't call for backup. Elena stared at Lynn's body. We make our own backup. Jace frowned. How? Command had a mobile field station about 6 miles underground from here, Bravo Point. It's old, pre-outbreak tech. But if we can reach it, we might be able to power the long-range comms manually. Davis raised an eyebrow. 6 miles through collapsed tunnels and feeding grounds? It's our only shot, Elena said firmly. They packed quickly, stripping Lynn's gear and salvaging what little ammo remained. With every movement, Elena's mind replayed what Lynn had said. It spoke. Something intelligent was steering this nightmare. And if it could command others, that meant their days of predictable patterns and shambling hordes were over. As they moved deeper into the tunnel system, the air thickened, damp with rot and mildew. Their flashlights revealed more strange signs, symbols etched into the walls and claw marks. Not random, structured. Repeating patterns. Kayla traced one with her fingers. It looks like some kind of language. Or a warning, Davis muttered. From them. Suddenly, the tunnel widened into an open maintenance chamber. Pipes crisscrossed overhead, and a massive, rusted generator sat at the center, half submerged in stagnant water. Jace swept the room with his flashlight. This could be a recharge point. Maybe even a signal repeater. Elena nodded. Let's rest here. Just 15 minutes. Then we keep moving. They settled down, half eating old rations. The silence returned. Then, crack. A subtle sound. Not loud. Not rushed. Like bones snapping under slow pressure. Elena froze. The others heard it too. Everyone rose instantly, weapons raised. From the shadows behind the generator, something moved, too smooth to be one of the mindless. Then a voice, calm and steady, echoed off the walls. You made it farther than most. A tall figure stepped into the light. It wore remnants of a military uniform, coalition, rank faded. Skin pale, stretched tight over high cheekbones. Its eyes shimmered with a glassy sheen, reflecting their flashlights like mirrors. Jace whispered, "That's not human." But it was. Or had been. Elena gritted her teeth. Identify yourself. The figure tilted its head. I was Captain Marcus Roan. I led the first strike team into Sector 0. Elena's blood turned to ice. That was 5 years ago. Everyone from that mission was listed Kia. They were, Roan said smoothly. We were taken, not killed. Our minds consumed, but our purpose, repurposed. Davis stepped forward. You're leading them. The Alphas. Roan nodded slowly. There are no more mindless. The infection learned. Evolved. And I was the first proof that intellect could survive infection. I remember strategy. Tactics. I remember weakness. Why talk to us? Elena asked. Because this war is almost over, Roan replied. Your cities fall in silence. Your leaders hide behind their own bunkers. You resist, but resistance is only memory now. I offer you one thing, surrender. Serve. You won't die, you'll adapt. No, Elena said. You've lost your humanity. Roan smiled. Humanity is what failed. Evolution is what saved me. Then he vanished, faster than anyone expected, like a whisper in the dark. Gunfire erupted. Davis fired blindly, and sparks danced off the pipes. Kayla screamed as a hand reached from the dark and pulled her off her feet. Elena lunged, firing a burst that echoed through the chamber. Roan, or whatever he'd become, vanished into the tunnels again. They regrouped, heartbeats pounding, Kayla shaken but unharmed. Jace looked around in disbelief. He could have killed us. Why didn't he? Elena's face was pale. Because he's sending a message, they don't fear us anymore. They want us to know they're smarter, and watching. She grabbed her gear. Let's move. No more resting. We get to Bravo Point. We send a warning. Or we all die in the dark. And behind them, deep in the tunnel's black heart, that same calm voice whispered a final word. Run. To be continued. The deeper they went, the colder it got. Elena's breath came in small clouds now, puffing ahead of her flashlight beam as they navigated the forgotten tunnels. The walls grew narrower, more corroded, veins of dark mold creeping along the surface like scars. No one spoke much since the encounter with Marcus Roan. His voice still lingered in their heads, smooth and terrifying. Kayla kept rubbing her arms as if to shake off his presence. That thing was a soldier. One of ours. Jace gritted his teeth. He's not one of us anymore. No, Elena agreed. But he knows how we think. That makes him more dangerous than 1,000 shamblers. They reached a long stretch of tunnel where water trickled along the center like a silent stream. At the far end, a rust-covered sign hung above a sealed blast door. Bravo Point, Field Ops Comm Station, Coalition Designation 7B. Davis pressed his hand against the panel beside it. Dead. No power. Elena examined the wall. Manual override? Maybe. If the backup crank system still works. He crouched and opened a rusted panel near the floor, revealing a corroded gear system. It took nearly 20 minutes of cranking and pushing, sweat dripping from their faces despite the cold. Finally, with a reluctant groan, the massive door unsealed. Warm, stale air rushed out. Inside, dust blanketed everything. Metal desks, old surveillance screens, shattered radios. But the bones of a comm station were intact. This place hasn't been touched since the early days, Chase muttered. Davis located the central panel. If the core generator is intact, I can boot the long-range antenna. But the signal won't last more than 5 minutes. Elena nodded. That's all I need. I'm sending out a warning. Every outpost, every survivor cell needs to know, the infected are changing. They got to work. Jace ran cables, Davis checked connections, Kayla guarded the hallway. Elena, meanwhile, scoured the data logs, searching for anything left behind by the last operators. And that's when she found it, an encrypted message labeled Operation Icefall, do not transmit. Curious, she tapped it open. A grainy recording flickered to life on one of the dusty screens. A man in a coalition uniform appeared, older, bald, clearly exhausted. His badge read General R. Montrose. If you're seeing this, he said, then the plan failed. We tried to contain Sector 0 with cryobombs. Freezing the infected down to the marrow, our last resort. But they adapted faster than we anticipated. They burrowed underground. They learned cold didn't kill them. It just made them quieter. The general looked away, shame etched into his face. I made the call to classify it as a success. I buried the evidence. I told the world the infection was weakening. I was wrong. They've been evolving beneath our feet. If anyone can still fight, don't repeat our mistake. Don't wait for them to knock. Hit first. Hit hard. The screen cut to black. Elena sat back, shaken. The world was lied to. The coalition knew. The early victories weren't victories, they were cover-ups. Elena. Davis called. Power's up. She stood and hurried over. A static-filled hum filled the air as the antenna came online. Lights blinked to life on the panel. Signal strength dropping fast. Jace warned. Elena grabbed the mic. This is Captain Elena Rivera, Survivor Unit Echo 6. Broadcasting from Bravo Point. If you hear this, listen carefully, this isn't the old outbreak. The infected have evolved. They speak. They lead. They remember being human, and they're using that against us. She hesitated, then added, and they've been here, planning in the shadows. Sector 0 was never contained. The coalition lied. But it's not too late. If we stand together, we can fight back. Dead America isn't dead yet. A red light flashed, signal lost. The room fell into silence again. Kayla exhaled slowly. Think anyone heard that? They had to, Elena said. They have to. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the tunnel outside. Jace leaned toward the corridor. That doesn't sound like movement, that's... An explosion shook the ground. A massive blast door at the tunnel's far end had been triggered, open from the outside. Red emergency lights flickered on. Davis checked the display. Someone just breached the maintenance tunnel. That was a remote override, only command-level clearance could do that. Elena's eyes widened. Roan. A distant, inhuman howl rolled down the passage, followed by a thunderous stampede of feet, many feet. Jace backed away. That's not a scouting party. That's a full assault. They followed the signal, Kayla whispered in horror. No, Elena corrected. They waited for it. They wanted to know where we'd go next. She grabbed her rifle. Fall back to the equipment vault. We fight our way out. No one's going down without a fight. The roar of the evolved undead grew louder. Dead America was listening. And it was coming. To be continued. Alarms wailed inside the decaying Bravo Point station, echoing through metal halls as red emergency lights flickered across the walls. The sound of inhuman screeches grew louder with every heartbeat, drawing closer like a tidal wave of terror. "Move! Now!" Elena ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. She took point, leading the team through the narrow side passage toward the vault, one of the last fortified chambers in the underground base. Davis slammed the control panel as they reached the heavy reinforced vault door. It hissed and opened just enough for them to slip inside. He activated the internal seal, and the door clanged shut behind them, cutting off the howling and pounding that followed. Inside, the vault was dark and cold, filled with towering shelves of crates, sealed lockers, and backup generators coated in dust. A massive logo stamped on the floor beneath their boots read, "Property of Coalition Black Division." Kayla looked around, confused. "What is this place?" Elena swept her light across the far wall, where faded writing read, "Advanced Containment and Anti-Evolutionary Measures Division, Level 7 authorization only." Jace turned to Davis. "Anti-evolutionary?" Davis's brow furrowed. This wasn't just a comm station, this was a black site. A place to store the weapons they didn't want anyone using. Elena nodded. "Weapons designed for creatures like Roan. This might be the break we've been praying for." They moved deeper into the vault, passing rows of equipment cases. Some were empty, looted or repurposed. But then Elena found a still-sealed locker labeled AEM, Class 4, Neural Disruptors. She opened it. Inside were 3 sleek rifles, strange in shape, almost experimental. Small canisters were attached to each one, labeled synaptic interference gas, handle with care. Jace picked one up, eyes wide. "I've only heard rumors about these. Designed to scramble the higher brain activity of evolved infected, basically turns their intelligence off like a switch." Davis whistled. "You hit them with this, they go back to basic instinct, no tactics, no voice, no memory. That's how we level the field," Elena said. From the vault's corner, Kayla found something else, an old data terminal still partially functional. She booted it up, and after a minute of searching, uncovered something chilling. A list of subjects. Human names. Each name was marked deceased, except one. Subject 9, Marcus Roan, status, evolved, active, uncontrollable. Under it, a log entry read, "Subject 9 displays complete retention of memory, speech, and personality traits. He has taken control of other infected and refers to himself as Prime. Attempts to relocate him for neutralization have failed. All operatives dispatched to retrieve Subject 9 are presumed dead." They knew, Kayla whispered. They knew exactly what he was becoming. Elena stared at the screen, fists clenched. And they let it spread. They left these weapons behind like the war was over. But Roan, he was the war. Suddenly, the walls vibrated. A deep metallic groan rolled through the chamber. Davis checked the systems. "They've breached the outer corridor. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they're through the secondary door. Then we make our stand," Jace said, loading one of the neural disruptors. Elena tossed Kayla another. "Test it once, aim for the head." They turned off all lights except for a single backup lantern near the door. Silence settled in for a moment, thick, tense, like the world was holding its breath. Then came the first crash. The vault's door buckled slightly, then again, each hit stronger, more coordinated. "Elena," Davis said cautiously, "there's something else. That data log, it mentions something called Project Lazarus. No details. Just a phrase, initiate only in worst-case scenario." Jace looked over. "This isn't worst-case enough for you?" Before Elena could answer, the vault door screeched open a few inches. A hand forced its way through, pale, clawed, but unmistakably human-like. It was followed by more. The creatures were trying to pry the door open by sheer force. Light them up! Elena shouted. The disruptors hummed as they fired. The canisters hissed, and a cloud of bluish vapor shot out toward the breach. The shrieking from the other side turned instantly erratic. Several undead screamed, clawed wildly, and then fell silent with a thud. Kayla blinked. It worked. But then came a sound that made their blood run cold, a slow, deliberate clap. From beyond the door, a voice echoed through the steel. Impressive, Captain Rivera. Truly. But every weapon you find. I've already seen it. I've already prepared for it. It was Marcus Roan. Elena stepped forward. Then come in and test your evolution. He chuckled. Soon. But not tonight. Not yet. I want you to see what's coming next. Then silence. The pounding stopped. The corridor was empty. Jace broke the silence. Why would he stop now? Elena looked at the canisters. He's not afraid. He's measuring us. Seeing what we'll do. Davis pulled up the vault's final record on the terminal. The file blinked in orange. Project Lazarus, subject initiation, in progress. And underneath it, a final message. This project may change the course of humanity forever. Elena narrowed her eyes. Then it's time we found out what it is. To be continued. The eerie glow of the data terminal cast long shadows across the vault as Davis stared at the screen, his fingers frozen above the keyboard. Project Lazarus, subject initiation, in progress. What do you think this is? Kayla asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Davis replied, but it's still active. That means something, or someone, is waking up. Elena stepped forward, examining the schematic that had appeared next to the message. There's a lower level beneath this vault. Sealed off. Looks like only high-clearance personnel could access it. Jace leaned in. A basement inside a basement. Real reassuring. The words initiate in worst-case scenario kept echoing in Elena's mind. Whatever Project Lazarus was, someone had built it for a desperate last stand. And desperate was exactly where they were now. Let's move, she ordered. They found a service hatch at the back of the vault. It was welded shut, rusted with time. Davis used a plasma torch from one of the crates to melt it open. The heat scorched the air, and the seal hissed like a dying snake. The hatch groaned as it swung open, revealing a spiral staircase leading into complete blackness. No power down there, Kayla murmured, flicking on her headlamp. Figures, said Jace. The one place that might save us is the darkest. Step by step, they descended into the bowels of the station, the walls growing colder and damper as they went. Finally, they reached a pressure-locked door with biometric scanners. Davis held up a strange device from the vault, a handheld override module. He connected it, fingers flying. Seconds later, the scanner beeped green, and the door unsealed with a heavy clunk. The chamber beyond was unlike anything they had seen. It wasn't military, it was clinical. Sterile. White tiles, smooth steel tables, glowing tanks lining the walls, and a faint hum of life support systems still running after all this time. In the center of the room stood a tall, transparent cylinder. Inside floated a person. A man. His body was lean, muscular, and covered in faint scars. Electrodes were attached to his head, and tubes snaked into his veins. His eyes were closed, but his chest moved slowly, rhythmically. Elena, Kayla breathed, he's alive. The readout on the tank's control panel blinked. Subject 0, status, stasis. Condition, stable. Jace's eyes widened. Subject 0? That's the first infected. No, Davis said, reading deeper. Not infected. Engineered. Lazarus isn't a weapon. He is Lazarus. They scanned the logs. Project Lazarus was an experimental initiative, a single human enhanced through genetic manipulation to resist the zombie virus. Not just resist it, override it. He's immune, Elena said, astonished. And more than that, he's stronger. Faster. This guy was designed to lead us. Kayla looked worried. But why leave him in here? Why keep him in stasis? Jace pointed to a line in the final entry. Subject exhibits extreme combat effectiveness, but unpredictable aggression. Requires psychological tether to stabilize integration. They couldn't control him, Davis realized. So they locked him away until someone desperate enough came along. Elena stared at the man inside the tank. We don't have a choice. We're running out of time. Roan knows everything we're doing. He's evolving faster than we can react. We need something he hasn't seen. She reached for the activation switch. Kayla grabbed her wrist. What if we're unleashing something worse? Elena met her gaze. Then we stop that too. But we won't get a second chance. She flipped the switch. The hum increased. Lights surged across the tank. Steam hissed from the base. The man's eyes shot open, brilliant silver with slit pupils. The tank drained, and the door unlatched. Subject Zero fell forward, landing in a crouch. He looked up at the team, blinking as if seeing them and everything for the first time. Elena took a cautious step forward. Do you know your name? He studied her, then said in a gravelly voice, I was Colonel Mason Rourke, before they changed me. Jace muttered, Colonel Rourke? He was declared dead a year ago. Rourke stood tall. I'm not dead. Not anymore. What year is it? Davis hesitated. 2029. Rourke's jaw tightened. That means Roan's still alive. And worse. I can feel him. Kayla blinked. You feel him? We're connected, Rourke growled. I was the prototype. He was the accident. But he's not the only one who evolved. He's not the only one who remembers. Elena's voice was sharp. Can you help us stop him? Rourke turned toward the stairs. I'm not here to help. I'm here to finish what the world was too afraid to start. He paused, glancing back. But if you follow me, stay out of my way. Without another word, Rourke walked toward the surface. Elena stared after him. A living weapon had just been unleashed. And for the first time, they had a real chance at reclaiming dead America. To be continued. Colonel Rourke didn't speak as he walked through the ruined streets above the bunker. His silver eyes scanned the horizon while the others followed, uncertain whether to keep a safe distance or stay close. Where are we going? Elena finally asked. To find him, Rourke answered, his voice rough like gravel. Roan thinks he's a god now. But gods bleed. Kayla stepped forward. If you're connected to him, then he's probably aware you're awake. I'm counting on it, Rourke said without stopping. The city had grown quieter. The usual groans of the undead were gone. It was as if the infected had retreated, vanished into the shadows. That unsettled the team even more than the constant danger. Silence meant Roan was preparing something. As they reached a collapsed highway overpass, Jace scanned the road with his rifle. This is a kill zone, he muttered. Open ground. No cover. That's why we're here, Rourke replied. He stopped at the center of the road, standing tall. Roan's watching. Let him come. Davis flinched. Wait, what are you doing? Before anyone could stop him, Rourke let out a guttural roar. Not human. Not fully. The sound echoed through the concrete canyons, a challenge, no, a command. Within seconds, the horde began to arrive. Dozens. Then hundreds. Crawling out of buildings, storm drains, subway tunnels. Some shambled, others ran. All of them came with dead eyes and snarling mouths. Jace raised his rifle. There's too many. Hold your fire, Rourke said, eyes glowing brighter. The undead circled him but didn't attack. They hesitated. Rourke stepped forward. The closest zombie, a grotesque husk with one arm, lunged. Rourke's hand flashed out, catching it by the throat. With a sickening crunch, he snapped its neck and tossed the body aside. Another charged. Rourke slammed it into the pavement with such force its chest caved in. Elena couldn't believe what she was seeing. He's fighting them barehanded. No, Kayla murmured, he's controlling the fight. They're testing him. And then, through the sea of rotting bodies, he appeared. Roan. He was taller than before. No longer entirely human. His flesh pulsed with black veins, and his eyes glowed a deep crimson. Well, Roan said, grinning. They woke up the monster. Not a monster, Rourke replied. Just a cure to your infection. Roan laughed, spreading his arms. You and I are the same. No, Rourke said, stepping forward. You're a mistake. The moment shattered. The horde surged forward, but not at Rourke. They attacked the others. Jace opened fire. Kayla tossed an incendiary grenade. Davis backed into cover, firing short bursts. Elena. Jace shouted, covering her as she ducked behind a wrecked SUV. Rourke and Roan collided like titans, fists slamming into each other with impossible force. The shockwaves cracked the pavement. Roan hurled Rourke through a car, flipping it end over end. But Rourke rose again. You've gotten stronger, Roan admitted. So have you, Rourke replied, cracking his neck. But I've got one thing you don't. Roan sneered. What's that? Control. Rourke rushed in, unleashing a flurry of strikes. Each blow landed with precision. Roan countered, tearing a chunk from Rourke's shoulder, but Rourke didn't even flinch. Meanwhile, Elena led the others toward a rooftop. We can't stay down here. Get to high ground. They scaled the fire escape, laying down covering fire as they went. Below, Rourke and Roan's battle left the street in ruins. Chunks of debris flew, fire burst from a ruptured gas line, and the undead scattered, either dead or unwilling to get between the two behemoths. Finally, Rourke slammed Roan into a wall, pinning him. You're not unstoppable, he growled. Roan's grin faltered for the first time. And you're not finished. He thrust a black spike of bone from his arm, impaling Rourke's abdomen. Rourke gasped but didn't fall. Instead, he grabbed the spike, snapped it off, and drove it into Roan's shoulder. Both men collapsed into the street. Elena. Kayla yelled from the rooftop. They're down. Elena looked at Rourke's still form. No, not like this. Then Rourke moved. Slowly. Painfully. He rolled onto his hands and knees, blood pouring from the wound, but he smiled. Roan had vanished. Retreated. Cowered. Rourke stood, shaky but alive. He looked up at the rooftop, nodded once, and began limping toward the shadows. Jace blinked. Where's he going? To finish it, Elena said. But even she didn't know what that meant anymore. To be continued. The dust hung thick in the air, choking the last rays of sunlight struggling to break through the gray blanket overhead. On the cracked pavement above the destroyed hive, Elena, Kayla, Jace, and Davis stood silent, their eyes fixed on the smoking crater that marked where the nest had been. The air smelled of fire and decay, a reminder that their victory had come at a terrible cost. Elena, Kayla's voice cracked. Do you think Rourke made it out? Elena swallowed hard, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her chest like a boulder. He had to. There's no other way. Jace lowered his rifle. He's strong. And he knows this city better than anyone. If anyone could survive, it's him. Davis wiped sweat and grime from his forehead. Still, it's been over an hour since the blast. No sign of him. A cold wind whipped through the empty streets as they began their cautious descent into the ruins. The resistance fighters gathered around them, hoping for news, any sign that their leader was alive. But silence answered. Back in the ruins of the tunnels, Rourke lay beneath broken concrete and rubble, pain radiating from every wound. His breath was shallow. His vision blurred, but through the haze, he saw movement. Roan. The infection lord had somehow survived the collapse. Bruised, bloodied, but still breathing, and still dangerous. Roan grinned, a terrible smile that promised only destruction. You thought this would end me? Rourke's fingers clenched into fists. No. But it ends now. With a sudden burst of strength, Rourke pushed away the heavy stones trapping him. The two titans rose, battered but unbroken. Their final battle would decide the fate of dead America. Above ground, Elena and the team moved quickly, searching for any clue of Rourke's survival. They knew the tunnels better than anyone, but the maze of broken corridors and flooded chambers was a deadly trap. Elena, look! Kayla shouted, pointing toward a narrow passage where fresh footprints led into darkness. The group followed, their footsteps echoing off damp walls. Suddenly, a guttural growl echoed from the shadows, a reminder that danger lurked still. Stay sharp, Elena warned. They pressed on, hope mingling with fear. Meanwhile, Rourke and Roan clashed again. Fists collided, shaking the very foundation of the tunnel. Roan unleashed waves of dark energy, but Rourke's unique infection gave him resilience, allowing him to absorb the blows. You're strong, Roan hissed, but you're still human. Not anymore, Rourke replied, his voice low and steady. With a final strike, Rourke plunged a shard of broken concrete into Roan's chest, shattering the infection lord's power. Roan's eyes flashed with fury, then dimmed. He collapsed. Rourke, breathing heavily, staggered out of the wreckage and into the dim light of the tunnel entrance, just as Elena and the others appeared. Relief flooded their faces. Elena! Rourke rasped. It's over, for now. She grasped his hand firmly. We finished this, together. Outside, the resistance fighters cheered, the sound carrying like a beacon of hope across dead America. The battle for the future was won, but the war was far from over. To be continued. Let me know when you want Part 10, the finale, 795 words, the final resolution, the future of humanity, and the closing of this epic story. Part 10, New Dawn Rising. The first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the shattered cityscape of New Chicago. The air was heavy but alive, no longer thick with the stench of decay, but tinged with the fresh scent of rain and rebirth. Elena stood atop the highest remaining skyscraper, her eyes scanning the horizon. Below, the streets that had once been battlegrounds now hummed quietly with the sound of rebuilding. Survivors worked tirelessly, clearing rubble, repairing structures, planting gardens where barren concrete had ruled for months. The long nightmare was over. Dead America was no longer a land of the undead. It was a land reclaimed. Beside her, Rourke leaned on his cane, the infection inside him finally subdued. His transformation was complete, not quite human, not quite monster, but something new, a bridge between two worlds. You did it, Elena said softly, looking at him. We did it, Rourke corrected, a rare smile tugging at his lips. But it's only the beginning. Down below, Kayla and Jace coordinated teams moving through the streets, distributing supplies, and securing safe zones. Davis was already setting up communications equipment, linking scattered survivor groups across what was left of the country. Everyone's coming together, Kayla said, eyes bright with hope. For the first time in a long time, we're united. Elena nodded. The fight taught us that survival isn't just about strength, it's about trust, community, and never giving up. Suddenly, a distant sound echoed through the city, a rumble unlike any they'd heard in years. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Elena, Rourke said, tension creeping into his voice. The infection isn't gone everywhere. Some pockets remain. And they're growing. Elena's heart sank. The victory was real, but the war was not yet won. We'll face them, she said with determination. Together. As the sun rose higher, survivors gathered in the city square. Old enemies embraced, hands extended across past divisions. Children laughed in the streets, their innocence untouched by the horrors that had once ruled the land. Elena stepped forward to address the crowd. Her voice rang clear and strong. This is our home. Dead America is no longer a place of fear but of hope. We fought back the darkness, and now, we rebuild. We protect. We live. Cheers erupted, echoing against the walls of broken buildings, carrying the promise of a new era. In the days that followed, survivors worked side by side to restore what was lost. Farms sprouted in vacant lots, schools reopened, and communities formed bonds stronger than steel. Rourke became a symbol, not of the monster he had been, but of the courage to change and lead. Elena often found herself reflecting on the journey, the fear, the losses, the victories. But above all, the unyielding spirit of humanity that refused to be extinguished. One evening, as she watched the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, Kayla joined her. "We did it," Kayla said quietly. Elena smiled. "Yes. And we'll keep doing it. For every day, every moment, we fight to keep this new dawn alive." The world was scarred, but it was alive. And so was humanity. The end. If you want, I can help you with a summary, key highlights for your audiobook intro/outro, or any other format you need for your YouTube content. Just let me know.